You literally don't owe anybody in this life shit. The obligations that you actually do have are if you have a child. You can't be like, oh, I don't have any obligations. No, you do, because you created that obligation. If you get married and you sign a marriage agreement, you have an obligation to your spouse. No matter how great your parents were, no matter how much stuff they did for you growing up, you have no obligation to your parent. Your friends, you don't have any obligation to them. And I think this is such an important thing to understand, to be free in life. And it doesn't mean that you're a jerk or you don't have to be a mean person, but we believe falsely that we owe people things, that if someone does something for us, that we have to do something in return. You owe nothing.
Beyond the perfect we discover, through our flaws we complete each other. Better than perfect we stay, through every fault we find our way.
All right, welcome back to the Better Than Perfect podcast, where every week we share with you how two imperfect people helping each other grow equals one better than perfect relationship.
That's
right.
And we're back.
We're back.
Back again.
Yeah, we don't have any real drama, do we? Anything
Let's
going
not
on?
create any.
We had some child parenting drama, but nothing that we can handle, and nothing we really want to talk about on the podcast for the protection of the people involved, I guess. But
yeah.
But yeah.
But it's just learning experiences, and kind of like we talked about in the last episode, like looking at the challenges in a positive way and telling yourself the story to make it a good thing rather than a bad thing that keeps you kind of like down and out. So
yeah.
But yeah.
And then I was trying to think what else. Really, yeah. I mean, we haven't had very many comments and stuff. So
comment away.
Yeah, comment away. Even if you disagree, it's cool.
Yeah.
I guess we'll just jump right into the episode then. So
Might as well.
This one is on, what do we say? Basically,
like obligations in a relationship that like your friends or your family.
Yeah.
You can feel
outside.
like they put on you or on you as a couple, or there's a bunch of different ways.
Yeah. Let's see. So yeah, I mean, we can start off with the one that we were just talking about, which is of like a wedding, right? So
yeah,
you've got, because we went through this situation where I think there's multiple aspects to this, right? So you've got the parents who want the wedding done a certain way or expect that you're going to get married in a church, or you're going to have this pastor, or you're going to do this thing. And then you've got
like when I used to sell wedding dresses, the moms that would like put their 2 cents in on the wedding dress, and it's like, ma'am, this is not your wedding day.
Right. Yeah.
Like you got to let her pick what she wants.
Yeah.
So it kind of ties though into like a parent being like, you have to do this. And one of my friends who got married, her parents were like that. And two, it's complicated when your parents are paying for the wedding, right?
Yeah.
Because then you feel obligated as well, because you're like, well, they're paying for it, so I have to do what they're wanting me to do, but it's your wedding day.
Yeah. So
that's like a slippery slope.
Well, I think it's so if someone's paying for it, I think the clear thing to ask is, are you hosting the wedding?
Right.
As a ceremony?
Or are you gifting?
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly the question. Because you just need to clarify that up front. Because if your parents are saying, yeah, we're hosting a wedding for you, we're paying for, we're creating the celebration to celebrate your marriage, right? And that's what we're doing.
Right.
Then that's a totally different thing than we're going to pay for your wedding,
gift.
for you.
Yeah.
Right. In most cases, it should be the second one, because unless you're, I think in the olden times, it was more of, and maybe in some cultures, it's like I'm hosting this event because my children are getting married, or my child's getting married, and this is about me hosting the event as a gracious host to people. I think that's more of an older thing. But today, the way it's supposed to be intended usually is, if a parent's paying for it, is I'm gifting this to you.
Right.
But then again, it's like ultimately you've got to decide that if it is a gift, you get to choose how you want it. And they might not like it, and that's okay.
Right.
Because it's your wedding. and it should be between the two of you on deciding how do you want that. Or you don't take the money, or you say, okay, we're going to do it our way because we don't want to feel the obligation or the pressure of this and not have to owe you something. Like if you're giving this to me as a gift, then I can do what I want with it as a gift.
Right.
If you're not giving it to me as a gift, it has obligations and strings attached, then I can either take those obligations and strings knowing that I'm doing it, or I can tell you to kick rocks and I'm going to pay for it myself.
Yeah.
That's it.
Then you also get into, like, if your parents want to invite people, like they want to invite specific people that they have in mind, which, like, my mom wanted to invite a few people who I knew these people also, and like they had been a part of my life in some way when I was younger and whatnot. So it wasn't really that big of a deal, but also it can get more complicated when the parent wants to invite a lot of people. And if you've ever been married, you know how expensive weddings are and you pay per person. Yeah. So, if your parent is trying to, or multiple parents are trying to add more and more people that they want, and sometimes it's people you don't even know.
Right, yeah.
And then you have to be like, no to your parents, which probably isn't going to go over very well. But at the same time, you need to stand up, like you said, for what you want. Unless they're hosting it, then I guess they can invite whoever they want. But, it's a delicate balance, because having been there when we got married and things like that, you want people to have a good time, and you want like everyone to be happy, and the families to be in a good mood and no drama. And that's like what everybody wants for their wedding day. But it's a lot more complicated than people think that it is, because even if you don't have your parents trying to plan specific things about your wedding or your wedding dress or what you're going to wear, or things like that, there's just a lot of people involved, and that can get kind of messy. And there definitely becomes these obligations, or you feel like there's these obligations or expectations that are being put on you, especially as the bride and the groom, and you're already dealing with all this stress of planning this thing, right? Like planning this day, and then now you're adding more things that maybe you necessarily don't want, or you're like, okay, I do want it, but then like budget. Like there's so many different intricacies of getting married, and there's so many hands in the pot a lot of the time. Even if like you don't have people paying for your wedding or you know, things like that. Like I think just as humans, we want to also make the people that we care about happy, right? And so even like I said, when I would work at the wedding dress place, and a mom would be like, I don't like that one, but a bride's like, I love this one. It's like, I would have to be in there in the dressing room with her doing damage control. I'm like, okay, we'll handle your mom. Like, is this the one that you want for sure? Like, and you have to eventually kind of be like, hey mom, like she loves this one. Like this is her day.
Right.
And kind of like get it back on track.
Yeah, drink some more champagne.
For one way or another. No, sometimes you don't want them to. That might go opposite way. But sometimes someone has to be the person there to be like, no, this is how it's going to go. I understand that like this isn't what you would expect. Because I also had a bride who bought a black wedding dress, and her mom was like not for it, and she was just like, Mom, this is what I'm doing. Like luckily for her, she was the person, who could stand up and be like, this is what I'm doing. Like I love you, but this is what's happening.
And that's how you should be. Like that's you should be that person. And it's good practice, right? Because the wedding is the beginning of the situation that you're going to have. If you can't stand up to your parents and tell them what then they're going to be interfering in your life, in your relationship. And that happens a lot. And it destroys a lot of marriages and relationships because you have to put your spouse first and the relationship first. Right. Those have to be first. And so you can't have a sense of obligation to other people because they're not involved in this, right? It's like
they're not your immediate family now, like your core family unit.
When I used to do software development on teams, we'd have this thing called Scrum, right? Which is kind of an agile methodology, which is a way of developing software. And in the idea of Scrum, there would be the you would have a pig, right? Like you're making breakfast, right? And you've got a pig and you got a chicken.
You're losing me.
Okay, right? Let's say that you're in like that. You're
I'm stuck on scrum.
Okay, well, this is what it's called.
This is very interesting.
It comes from like the rugby scrum. They would.
It just reminds me of Harry Potter
scrum.
for some reason.
but in the process of making breakfast, you would have this analogy of you've got a chicken and you've got a pig, right? And they both contribute to breakfast, right? The chicken lays the egg. The pig ass is on the line. So the pig contributes more. So the pig has higher stakes in this thing. And so it's like all these people that are outside of your relationship, they're chickens. They're laying eggs. Okay. But you in the relationship, you're the pigs. Your ass is on the line.
Yeah, this is your wedding day.
Who gets to have a say? The chicken? Chicken doesn't get to have a say. The chicken is not the one who's putting their ass on the line. The pig gets to have a say because the pig is the one that's getting literally their ass is becoming breakfast, right? So so that's the thing is to understand that in the relationship, you're the one that's gonna be in the relationship. You're the one that's going to potentially have the divorce. You're the one who's going to be, it's going to be your life and it's going to be your children, right? And so you have to, even though you love all these other people and you care about your family and you care about your friends, their opinions don't matter. You have to be protecting the relationship, your spouse, the relationship itself. Those things come first, and you just have to learn to do that. Otherwise, they're going to interfere with your relationship and they're going to destroy it and they're going to sabotage it. They're not meaning to, but especially we did an episode where we talked about standing up for your spouse against family members and taking their side always.
Yeah,
you're going to have to do that. Otherwise, you're going to be in trouble because parents do like to get their hands in there and into your relationship
because they've helped you grow up for a decent chunk of your life, in your formative years.
Yeah.
So, I get it, but I definitely agree with you that eventually you have to break out of that because you're forming your new family unit. Yeah. And that's not to say that they don't matter anymore and that you don't care about them or you won't see them or whatever.
Right.
But that is now your main core family at that point is the family that you're creating. You're becoming one with somebody and your wedding day is a big deal.
Yeah.
You usually only get one. Some people have more than one, but even then it's still the one day with the person that you're with. So even if you get married more than once, it's your day to honor the love and commitment that you are about to embark on and the family that you're building literally that day. Yeah. So it should be how you want it to be. And it's definitely hard to have to make some of the hard choices and telling people no and, or having a boundary at our wedding, we didn't have young kids at the wedding.
Yeah.
And so there were some of my family members that chose not to come because some of their kids couldn't come. And I respect that. I'm not upset with them. Yeah. Would I have wanted them there? Yes. But I also understand that I wanted to not have young children running around at the wedding.
Yeah.
And that was the wedding day. So, I had to make the hard choice. And I love kids, but it's sometimes for some things that you want it to be a certain way. And sometimes you have to make those hard choices. And it's people might get upset with you and it might hurt their feelings. But if you just continue to show them that you care about them, that it's not a personal thing, that, you really want them to come, but this is how you envision your wedding day. And, maybe you can all get together for a different sort of occasion and, have that moment. There are a lot of other options, but I get that it's scary and it's hard to do.
Yeah.
But ultimately, if it's a big deal like your wedding day, it is something that you should face rather than, kind of just trying to appease everybody. And I have been a people pleaser at times. I still have people pleasing tendencies. So I definitely understand that that urge can be there. You're like, I don't want to like upset anybody. I just want it to be everyone to be happy. I just want things to go well. But I think with something big like a wedding or some other big sort of life event thing where you have to kind of be like, well, what do we want?
Right.
Like, because this is our day.
Yeah.
That it does kind of make it easier to make the hard choices because it's like, as a people pleaser, it's like the one day that you get to put yourself first, right? And you kind of like try to focus on what you want for your day, even though it should be like that in general. Exactly. But I'm saying that if you feel like you want to please everybody, you need to kind of reframe it and be like, this is your one wedding day.
Well, and it should
like
be
what
the
you
beginning.
Really want.
Yeah, and it should be the beginning of the end of that. Like
well, I agree
because
with
now
that too.
Now you have someone else.
But
that,
I
like,
think
if you
it
want
will
to
be.
Because when you're a people pleaser by yourself, you're only hurting yourself. When you're a people pleaser and you have a spouse, now you're hurting your spouse. Because what happens is then you end up prioritizing other people's feelings over your spouse because you don't want to let people down. You don't want to hurt people's feelings.
But I think we're essentially saying the same thing because I think if you do end up standing up for yourself and like having those boundaries in a kind way, then you're more likely to continue that. You're not going to like go back to being just, trying to please everybody. So I do think it is a good time to actually practice, like you said, doing those things for yourself, having to have those hard conversations and not trying to appease everybody to your own like resentment or the things that you don't want to actually happen so that you can continue that moving forward. Because I agree with you. Like at that point, it doesn't affect just you. It affects your partner. It affects your family unit, your new family unit that you're coming to have. So,
and I think these things happen. It's not even, I mean, we're using the wedding case, but it's throughout your relationship and your life. A lot of things that friends, like there's a lot of people that put obligations on you or you feel obligated to. And I mean, this is just good life advice in general, is to not allow people to put expectations on you, not to put expectations on people, but even so more important in the relationship, because once you're in the relationship, you've got to make your own choices, because there's so many people that live their lives for others, or they're going to events that they don't want to go to, even to other people's weddings that they don't want to go to, or maintaining friendships that no longer serve them because they don't want to hurt people's feelings or let them down. And it's like, you can't do that, because you're sacrificing your relationship when you do that. You have to be willing to. You don't have to be mean to people.
Right.
But you have to be
honest.
Yeah. And just say no.
Yeah.
Or I'm not going to do that. Or a lot of times, even with the parent situation, to say, oh, I appreciate your opinion on this. However, I'm not going to do that.
Right.
And that's it. You don't need to get into argument. You don't need to justify your position. You have autonomy over your life. You and your partner do of your relationship.
Yeah.
But I think that circumstance comes up a lot, and I think it destroys a lot of relationships, because sometimes we can let these obligations that we think that we have take precedence over the things that are the healthy things for a relationship. Yeah,
that's like one of my friends from Florida. She was planning like a trip for her birthday, and which is coming up, and she asked me if I wanted to go, but it was like, she's single and it would have been just me, and like we don't do like the trips, you and I have agreed that we don't do trips like without one another, sort of thing. So I had to tell her no, and she was really bummed, and like she didn't fully get it at first.
Yeah.
But I had to stand on that, because that's, a boundary and, a principle that you and I have, that we're not going to do that. So even in instances like that, which I feel bad, like it's her birthday and would I love to go on a trip with her? Yeah. But it's just not like, I met her when I was single, and I probably would have gone if I was still in that state. Sure, but I'm in a different place and like, a different time in my life, and you're my, main focus. You and Sophia are my main focus. And so I have to honor those things first.
Yeah.
And even though I care about, and I can still care about her, and I still love her, and I want her to have the best time, and like, all of that. But I just can't be the friend at this point in my life to actually go on the trip with her because it's just not something that is in the values that I have at this point and where I'm at in my life.
And I think that's a great example because I think a lot of people would feel pressured in that situation and then they would do it because they would say, well, I have to do this because I can't let my friend down. It's her birthday. It would be rude of me, whatever. And they'll make that justification perhaps to their spouse. And then it's a slippery slope. It's because now you're putting, even though it might seem like an innocent thing to do something, now you're putting an external source, the chicken, who's doesn't have a part in the relationship. Their values are letting them down ahead of your relationship goals and your relationship principles and your spouse in that case. And it's not good. That's not good. But a lot of people do that. That is a serious problem. Don't get me wrong.
I felt bad.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I didn't want to hurt her feelings or make her feel like I don't care about her, wouldn't want to go. But the reality is, like you said, I had to realize that, you and I we don't go on trips like that anymore. Like if it was like a couple trip with other couples and we were able to make it, sure. And even, it's far away. So it's like, do we have the time to even go? It just becomes a lot of things that you have to consider when you come into a marriage that you don't really consider as much when you're single. Like you still can feel obligations from people in your life when you're single.
Right.
But it is a lot different when you're in a relationship. And that's why the marriage is such a good thing, right? Because it's kind of the first time in your relationship that you're really focusing on what you guys are about to become, which is one person, like one family. Like, not to say that people don't focus on them collectively as a couple when they're in a relationship, but it's the wedding and marriage where I feel like you're really realizing this is about to be my number one person. They should have been already, but I can understand where, you're not putting all your eggs in the basket until you walk down the aisle.
Okay, yeah.
But, I feel like that's why the weddings is such a big deal too. Yeah. And that's when you're kind of still in that in between where your family can kind of creep in and you're like, oh, maybe I should let them invite 5 people that I don't know, because you're still kind of in that in between, that person hasn't become your wife or your husband yet. But at the wedding, when you're planning the wedding, you have the mindset of that's happening and this is what it's going to be and that's going to be my person. That's going to be my family. And so it's kind of the first time where you look at the talk from outside, from family and friends differently, where you do start to consider, okay, well, how's my spouse going to feel about this? Can we even afford to have 5 more people at the wedding? Is that going to take away from some people that she really wants to invite? Or how are we going to figure this out together? And what things do we need to say no to, even though they might be hard?
Right.
But we have to do this collectively, me and my fiance, or, because we're about to become man and wife and, be a family unit for the first time. And it's different than the family unit you were in before, the friend group. You're still going to have your friends, but when you get married too, your partner is your priority. Yeah. And your family if you have kids.
Yeah. Not the outside. I mean, you shouldn't let the outside obligations be affecting your life anyway, just as a single person, but it just becomes more so now because now you're affecting someone else also and you're in this one that you've become.
Right.
And it really does cause problems. I have a coaching client of mine who he has, I think it was his wife's sister's husband or something like that. I don't. It was some relative of his wife's that the guy would come and he would stay with them for a couple months over the summer every year because he was doing a fishing trip or something, right? And it got to the point where he was really, they didn't want him there anymore, but they felt obligated.
Yeah.
And I had to kind of give him the advice because he was like, I feel bad telling him that that, and he's not paying any rent, and he's like, just assuming that he's going to be there. We didn't even invite him back anymore. And he's just assuming that. And I told him, I was like, you just have to be honest and just say no.
Which it's scary. I get it.
It is, but it's such an inconvenience, at the point that it was putting himself out and his wife out. Even, she didn't want him there. And it's like, you're living out of obligation.
Yeah.
And is causing harm to your life and to your relationship potentially for this other person that you just have this sense of obligation to. And it's like, you don't know. I mean, the big thing, because again, I tell my coaching clients this all the time, not even just regard to relationship, but just obligations in general, because a lot of people have this with their parents, is that, and I think this is just important to understand, is that you literally don't owe anybody in this life shit. You don't owe them shit, nothing. There is no obligation that you have as a human being that is not one that you have entered into. So meaning that the obligations that you actually do have are, if you have a child, you have an obligation because you created that obligation. You made a choice to have a child. So now you're obligated to take care of that child. You can't be like, oh, I don't have any obligations. No, you do, because you created that obligation. If you get married and you sign a marriage agreement, if you're entering into that vow, you have an obligation to your spouse because you've entered that into that. However, no matter how great your parents were, and no matter how much stuff they did for you growing up, you have no obligation to your parent at all. You don't owe them anything. You don't have to do anything for them. You're living your own life. You have no obligation. Your friends, you don't have any obligation to them. Even if they did stuff for you, unless they said, I'm going to do this for you and I expect this in return, it's not an obligation, right? Because even if people are kind to you, even if they do stuff for you, it does not obligate you. And I think this is such an important thing to understand, to be free in life. And it doesn't mean that you're a jerk or you don't have to be a mean person. But we, many times, and I know this because I've coached a lot of guys, and I know the psychology of this, is that we believe falsely that we owe people things, that we have to do things, that we're obligated, that if someone does something for us, that we have to do something in return. Unless there's an agreement, unless it's a contract, you've agreed to something, you owe nothing. You don't have to do anything. You don't owe anyone because you were born. You didn't choose to be born. You didn't make a contract with that. The only obligations you really have are ones that you've contractually entered into. So if you sign a business agreement and say you're going to do something, you're obligated. You make a promise, you're obligated. You have a child, you're obligated. Those are the only obligations, and that's it. And if you can understand that, it's going to lead to some difficult conversations in life, but it will simplify your life, and it will take a huge amount of stress off of you because you're not responsible for other people and making them happy. And it will definitely help your relationship, because when one person still believes that they have all these obligations, they carry those obligations into the relationship, and it starts to harm the relationship, because now this person is in servitude to all these outside things that have nothing to do with the relationship, have nothing to do with the other person, but now that other person is now saddled by these things that have come into it. So whatever you take into a relationship, it's not just about you. You're saddling the other person with those obligations as well. Just like if you come into a relationship, a marriage with debt, that's an obligation that you have. You get into a marriage, now that's a shared obligation. You've created that obligation for your spouse. So yeah.
Yeah. I think too, it stems from fear. If you get down to the depths of it, that people don't want to hurt people's feelings because the fear of, them never wanting to talk to you again or something like that. Especially people so close to you, like your family or your really good friends. So it's really hard to make those hard choices, like you said. And again, I don't think people should hear what you said and just be jerks. Like,
right.
I think there is something valuable in being kind and, caring about people. But I agree with you that you can't care more about people than you care about yourself, because ultimately, and I'm not saying like be selfish either, but I'm saying that like if you're doing something that you don't really want to do, you're
Right.
just going to cause resentment inside of you. And even though you're like, oh, well, it's making someone else happy, that's really not, if it costs your happiness, it's going to stick inside of you
Right.
and cause a lot more problems in the long run. And again, like none of this is an example to be a jerk or, treat people poorly or anything like that. But because there is a way to kindly and caringly tell somebody no and still try to harbor those relationships so that you don't have to live in that fear, right? Because I think people have a hard time telling people hard things because they're afraid that they'll never talk to them again or things like that. Especially like if it's your parents, like you don't want your parents to be like, I never want to talk to you again. But you also can't just do whatever they want.
Right.
If it's not what you want as well either, because then you're not even really living for yourself. So it's that delicate balance of being like, hey, like, I know you want to invite these 5 people to the wedding, but we don't really have that in the budget or the guest list. So unfortunately, we're not going to be able to doing that. And if your mom's mad because she can't invite her 5 friends, be like, I understand you're probably disappointed, but this is our wedding day and it's what we have to do in order to have it go off the way that we are planning it to and that we want it to.
Yeah.
I hope, you're not mad at me enough to not want to talk to me again, because I still want you to be able to come to the wedding, because I know some people probably run into where their mom might be like, well, I'm not coming if my friends aren't coming, like people do run into those extreme cases. But, reassuring, I really want you there. Like, you're super important in my life. And, I can't even imagine not having my mom at the wedding. So I'm hoping that you're still able to come, but I'm not able to do the 5 people that you want to invite. Like, you still have to have that boundary and still do what you want to do and still be honest about it. But you can do it in a way where you're still letting that person know that you care about them and their feelings about the situation. And, I understand that this isn't the outcome that you would want, but it's what has to happen for our day.
But there's a lot of adults that still haven't learned the word no and how to handle it. And sometimes, and you don't really, it's good if you want to explain to some degree your point, but you don't owe anyone an explanation either.
Yeah.
You can say no, and your no can simply be a no, and that's okay. Again, not being a jerk about it, but just saying, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
That's enough. Again, maybe if it's your parent, you want to say a little bit more than that. But a lot of times when you say a little bit more because you're trying to be nice, and we know this because it happens with our daughter too, it's like you give the explanation and then it gives someone a little thread that they can be like,
They're like, maybe I can convince them.
Right. And so it would have been better to just say no.
Yeah.
Yeah. So many cases. And I think the big thing about it too is it's like, you can do things because people want you to. You can. But you should never do them out of obligation. So if you feel like you must do them, that's right. Because there is such a thing as making a sacrifice, but you have to own it and realize that you've chosen that. So if someone wants to do something or wants you to do something and you really are not too big on that, then you have a choice. You have to recognize you have the choice because you have that sovereignty, and you can either not do it and tell them no, or you can make a sacrifice, which is an okay choice, and say, okay, I'm gonna do something for them, even though I don't like it as much. But you have to do. But that's not doing it from obligation.
Right.
It's doing it from obligation when you feel like if I don't do this. Exactly. Your plow horse, like I have to do this now. Otherwise, there's going to be an emotional consequence that they're going to give me. That's the wrong reason to do it, because that will breed resentment, right? Because there's plenty of times when I do something that I don't necessarily want to do. We make sacrifices for our daughter all the time. They're not things that we necessarily, look, we went to a K-pop concert. Do I want to necessarily go to a K-pop concert? No, I had a good time and I'm glad I went, but I made a sacrifice. I would have spent my night doing something else. I can't say that I did it. And again, maybe the daughter one is a little bit different because of that, but I have an obligation to take care of her but I don't have an obligation to take her to K-pop concerts. That's something I chose to do. But I made a sacrifice of my evening because I wanted to spend the time with her and make her happy, which
Right.
was a choice I made, not out of obligation. And that's the key thing about this is because once you,
Yeah.
I think once you grasp that, then you realize that, yeah, you have the freedom to make these choices, but you have to understand you have the freedom. Because if you don't, you're going to do things out of obligation. And the flip side of it is this, is when you do things out of obligation, you think you're serving someone, but you're not. Because have you ever had someone do something for you out of obligation and you know they don't want to be doing what they're doing and it ruins it for you?
Yeah.
You would rather they just told you the truth, right? Rather than them doing the thing begrudgingly
Yeah.
because you know it, even if they're trying to put on a smile, you're like, they don't really want to be here. Like, let's say that you're like, John, will you come with me to Costco? And I'm like, okay, I'll come with you to Costco, but I feel like I have to do it, right? Because you're asking me to do it and you're going to be upset at me if I don't do it. And so then I go to Costco and I'm walking around Costco and you're like, look at this. And I'm on my phone the whole time looking at this thing, wishing I wasn't there. Like, wouldn't you rather I just didn't go to Costco?
Yes.
Right? So, and that's how people feel. So a lot of times we think that we're doing someone a service, but when we're not telling them the truth about how we actually feel and we're doing things out of obligation, we're not even actually helping them. It's actually worse for them as well.
And when, like you said it really well, when you feel like you're not choosing it, because I feel like if you were like, okay, I am going to go to Costco with Nicole and like mentally made that distinction, it would have probably been different as well than me asking you and you being in your head like, no, I don't want to go, but I'm going to tell her yes, but I'm going to drag my feet the entire time because I don't want to go, And then that's why you act the way, like being on your phone or things like that. So, if you're making that choice and you distinguish that, okay, I'm making this choice. I don't particularly want to do this, but this is my choice. You'll have a better experience than, like you said, if you're like, oh, I don't want to do this, but I have to. Then you're not going to enjoy it at all. Like even if you're, like you said, putting on a fake smile, they're going to know that you don't want to do that. So it's better to, like you said, make the choice and the sacrifice. Or tell somebody the truth that, no, I don't want to go to Costco with you.
And you can even say, I don't really want to go to Costco, but I'll go for you. But now I'm still making the choice. I'm telling you, I don't really want to go. I would do something else with my time, but I would love to do it for you. Right. So then you don't feel bad now because you're like, okay, well, he's doing this for me. Whereas before, you're unsure if I'm doing it for you. You're like, I don't know. He said he wants to go, but he's there staring at his phone, and it looks like this is the most miserable day that he's ever experienced in his life.
Well, and you've
does he even enjoy being with me?
You've given someone the option to, even if they say that, where you could be like, oh, well, if you don't want to go, then I'll just go by myself. So like you said, even the being honest about your sacrifice can also get you what you want. If they're like, never mind, like I don't mind going by myself, then you can go. But hopefully they're not like telling you that and then gonna resent you for it. They shouldn't do that. But
no, because then they're doing the thing. They're out of obligation. Because then they're like, let's twist our brain here, but then they're out of obligation, releasing you from your supposed obligation because they feel like they have to let you. They can't now say, oh, I'd like you to go anyway. So there's multiple levels to this 3-dimensional chess game. But it is important to understand this because, especially in the relationship, it will affect, because it's not just you anymore. Before, if you want to live not understanding this and be other people's plow horse, it's okay. You shouldn't. But now when you've got someone else involved and especially when you've got kids involved now, you've got a family, other people are depending on you. And now you're allowing yourself to be obligated by other people who have no say in your relationship. And that's where this becomes a really important thing. And it's a super important topic because I deal with this all the time. It's hard.
A lot of people struggle with it. I still struggle with it in different ways. Like last night when we had some friends over and me and the girlfriend were deciding, do we go to dance or not? And it's like, I was like, I want to go because I want to see the teacher. But I was really tired and my friend was really tired. And so, we sat there for a long time, like going back and forth. Do we go? Because we made this, like we signed up for the class. But then it's like, do we honor that we don't really want to go? Like, And are we going to just be dragging ourselves to dance? Like, I know we would still have fun if we went, but it's like, is that going to be a different experience because we wanted to stay home because we felt tired?
Yeah.
So, but then again, I'm like, but the teacher, I haven't been to one of her classes in so long. And like, I care about her and her feelings and I don't want her to be offended. And it's like, you know, which I do still care about that. But ultimately I had to honor the fact that I just didn't feel like going and my friend didn't feel like going. So we ended up not going. And it was hard though, because I thought about the teacher where I wanted to go and, you know, but then I signed up for next week and I'm like, you know, if she's upset that I didn't go, I'll make it up to her next week, you know, when
you don't have to make it up because that's enough.
I'll see her though and apologize is what I mean. Like if she's upset about it, then I'll apologize that I didn't go.
Doing what you wanted.
Well,
you weren't obligated.
For wasting her time, like wasting a spot because I do need to apologize
that's
for that.
For wasting a spot for sure. Yeah.
So, you know, that's
but I mean, you're demonstrating. It is tricky because even that same night last night, I almost was because there was a pet situation where I didn't really want the pet involved in the situation without getting too much into details. And I had to.
We didn't know how our pet would respond.
Yeah, my inclination was to be like, "Oh, I don't want to let them down," but it's like, no. But the honest truth is, no. I would prefer if this wasn't the case, and that's okay. Like, and sometimes people are going to be disappointed when you express what your truth is, and that's okay. But it's hard. It's still hard. It's still hard because you don't want to let people down,
right?
But
and especially ones you care about, like we're talking about, like with a wedding or something like that. Because, like, you know.
But if I had not made that decision, then maybe the pet would be there, and I'd be annoyed because there'd be issues with the things that we'd be dealing with that I didn't want. And that would have interfered with this, it would have
distracted from the quality
and
time.
so then I would have been annoyed, right? And so I mean, it is something that.
Right. I just don't want people to watch this and be like, you know, you're like, just don't care. Like, don't be obligated, like, which is true. And for a lot of people, sometimes that does flip the switch. So I'm not saying it's not valuable information.
No.
But I just want to be honest that it's hard to navigate, especially when it's people you really care about. Because I agree with you. Even last night for the same reason, I was like, oh, I hope they come over and be mad at us, you know, or whatever.
But it comes down to like, don't do anything. This is going to sound like really weird advice, but I've said it a lot of times is don't do anything you don't want to do. So what does that mean? It means if you do it, decide that you want to do it. It means willingly do it. Yeah. So even if it's a sacrifice, at some point, like we were saying before, you're like, oh, I don't want to do this. Okay, so then don't do it.
Right.
Or change your attitude about it and do it. But you can't do it while you don't want to. Yeah. Because you're going to be a miserable...
Debbie Downer.
Exactly. Yeah. I was going to say a miserable Nancy, but Debbie Downer is something.
Nancy.
Negative Nancy. That's what it is. But yeah, so you have to commit in your mind that if you're going to do something, especially if you're going to do something for someone, no one likes someone who does something for you and tries to make you feel obligated or makes you feel just how inconvenienced they are by the thing that they're doing for you.
Oh, you're like, I've experienced that
like,
too.
Don't even do it for me if you're going to tell me about what a sacrifice
dinner.
It is.
Yeah.
Right?
I've experienced that.
So you have to, that's why it is very true. Don't do anything you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Period. It seems like crazy advice, but it really is true.
No, it is. And you're right. But I just wanted to be honest that it's hard. And
yeah, it is hard.
It's easy to fall into the loop, even if you have the mindset like we're talking about. You kind of have to continuously tell yourself these things and continuously do the hard thing, which is say no or, like you said, do what you actually want to do or say no to the things you don't want to do. The more you do that, the easier it does become. But you can still fall into the loop of being like, well, I care about what that person, feels like. I think, too, that people need to realize that sometimes they do things and care about how people feel because they think the person will notice.
Right.
And you have to count on them not noticing because then it's not coming from the place that you actually think that it's coming from. It's coming from more of like a transactional thing like we talked about in the last episode. Yeah. So that's why, like you said, you either have to say you don't want to do it and don't do it or make the sacrifice and commit to that choice that you made and change your mindset about it and be like, this is what I'm going to do and I'm going to enjoy the time because I committed to this. Yeah. because otherwise you're just causing a lot of other internal problems when you're doing things because you're trying to get something from someone else or you're trying to influence someone else in some way. And so that's why, like you said, just being honest about it. And even if, like you said about the Costco thing, if you're like, I don't really want to go, but I will go for you because you asked me to and I want to do this for you or something.
Or even, I don't want to go, but I like spending time with you. And if I can spend more time with you, even if it's doing some activity I don't want to do, I'd rather do that.
Yeah.
Like those are all
fine answers to give. Yeah.
Yeah. So, or even I don't want to go, but I would like to do, like you, in your mind, you might even say, I don't want to do this thing, but I do enjoy the look on my partner's face or my friend's face of making them happy, of doing something for them. And I enjoy doing that. And I can like that and feel like I have a choice in that as opposed to not having the choice where I'm going to get the resentment. And I think it also applies in the relationship, right? Because even in the relationship, because a lot of times we have outside obligations, but it's the inner obligations too. Like you shouldn't feel obligated to your spouse to do these things. You have to be honest because that's how resentment starts building up. Is it's like, well, I don't really want to do this thing, but I always get dragged to this thing.
That's very true.
It's like you need to address that. You either need to say that you don't like the thing, but and then say, but I'll do this for you, and then in your mind really accept that you have your sovereignty and you're making this choice and that you do enjoy that you're doing something for your spouse and that's what is meaningful to you, not the actual thing. Because there's lots of things that we don't necessarily want to do, but we do for someone, but we have to do them for the right reason, meaning that we have to tell ourselves that, I'm doing this because I enjoy making my spouse happy. Yeah. And this makes my spouse happy. And so that I'm okay with that, and then it becomes a meaningful sacrifice instead of an obligation or something that we dread or regret. Like we have to be honest with those things because those things will build up over time, and it does. And then finally someone blows up and says, "For 3 years I did this," and and then the other person feels completely blindsided and completely hurt because they felt like you're doing something for them out of kindness, and you really just felt like you had to do it because you're afraid of them being upset with you. That's a huge betrayal. And and those things happen all the time in relationships.
No, it's good that you mentioned that it can even happen in the relationship as well too, because you're right that I feel like that's probably one of the main reasons that resentment does build up is because people are doing things that they don't really want to be doing and they're expecting their partner to appreciate it or notice or whatever, and they're not, and when they don't, then like you said, it builds up and then they just explode. And then the other partner's like, well, I thought you wanted to do these things. You said yes. And you've been doing them. I didn't know that you didn't want to be doing this.
Could happen with a meal, a food. Like, oh, you like this? Did you like this dinner that I made? Oh, yeah, it's great. And now they think it's your favorite. And now they keep on cooking this thing that you hate to eat. Yeah. Right? It's like you get yourself into these situations by not being honest. And then you're gonna really hurt the person's feelings later on when you tell them.
5 years later when you're like, I don't like your spaghetti and meatballs.
Exactly. And they're like, I kept on making it special for you.
Yeah.
And how good you feel when you're making something special for someone because you feel like they like it.
Yeah.
And then to find out, that becomes a huge betrayal. So it's better to just be honest from the beginning and do it in a tactful way.
That's true.
And yes, it will hurt some feelings, but it'll hurt feelings a lot more not being honest.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. All right. I think we beat that dead workhorse, plow horse into the ground. He's ready to go to the gum factory or the glue factory.
Glue factory, yeah.
So
he's ready to be put down.
All right. Yeah. Anything else that you had on it?
No, I thought that was good. I mean, it's I get both sides, right? Because it's like I've definitely been there, but it is more empowering to, stand up for yourself and speak your truth and do it in a kind and caring way. And like I said, you feel like you'll lose those connections, but it makes them better. And that's the truth. So, but you still fall into the loop sometimes, but don't beat yourself up about that either. Just, stand back up and speak your truth.
Yeah. And you can always tell someone, I got to be honest with you. I have not been honest with you.
I have to be honest with you. I have not been honest with you.
I'm coming clean. I've been pretending like I like this because I didn't want to hurt your feelings. It's a hard conversation, but it's a much better one.
Yeah.
And most people will be understanding of that because you've been vulnerable enough to say that and to come forward with that. Like I've had to tell people before, like, I don't know your name. I know you've told me it. I know I've been pretending like I know your name, but I don't know your name.
That's definitely a hard one to say.
All right. I don't think we had any. I mean, we've been going along smooth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, we have nothing
Keep
for
them
us,
going.
but just check out the new website, betterthanperfectpod.com. Pod, not podcast, betterthanperfectpod.com, and sign up on there. If you subscribe on there, you'll get the new episodes when they come out automatically, and you can leave comments. If you want to leave us a review on iTunes, we're not begging anymore for it, but
Anymore.
but do it. So
We'll do it anyway.
yeah. Anything else we got?
No, I don't think so.
That's it. All right. We'll see you next
See you
week.
next time.